Attending the webinar today with the Grow My SME. Today we're going to be discussing how disruptive innovation can hurt you. I've got myself on the call. I'm a co-founder of a company called ThinkCloud, and we specialise in cybersecurity and managed IT services. And quite recently, through the pandemic, I've been helping a charity to pivot and change their business model. I'm also joined on the webinar today by Colin Bell, running Moves Management Consultant. Do you want to just introduce yourself, Colin?
Yeah, my name's Colin Bell. The background in growing, exiting businesses. So really specialise in scale up and do quite a bit of work with local and national government, just really thinking about how can we develop ecosystems that support companies to grow, innovate and scale up. So that's a bit about me.
So thanks, Colin. To move forward, the topics we're going to be covering today is how disruptive innovation can hurt you. 3 steps to succeed through technology, and Colin's also put some sort of examples around how we can take some of the ideas that we're going to learn from today's webinar into practical steps within a business. And then we're also going to be giving you some information around the digital catalyst scheme, around how you can get some expert help to also innovate using some of these techniques and these frameworks used today. So we're going to go on a bit of a journey, and a key sort of point is how can disruptive innovation hurt you? And when we look back at history, history sort of tells us a tale, if you like. And this is one of my favourite slides from Henry Ford. And when he was looking to pivot and change his business model, if he'd have asked, what his customers wanted, he would have made faster horses. That's what they'd be looking at, having. And when we roll that forward and we look at, a new entry into the market, a relatively, new company, is Tesla. And what I think is quite interesting when you look at Tesla's business model, it's completely disrupting the automakers industry. And I took this sort of quote from a call from Tesla, and they was basically saying that the fundamental message that consumers should be taking from today is that it's financially insane to buy anything other than a Tesla. It'd be like owning a horse in 3 years. Fine if you want to own a horse, but you should go into it with that expectation. If you buy a car that does not have hardware for full self-driving, it's like buying a horse. And he goes on to state that the only car that currently has that hardware is a Tesla. So as businesses, when we're looking to have a unique value proposition or looking to disrupt our market, when we're able to make bold statements like that, this is actually disruptive technology in action. And when we roll that forward and we look at the business model that they've put together, the all-in cost ownership of this is based on the Model 3, is 47p a mile, and that's based on doing 13,500 miles, 250 miles, across 250 million vehicles, and it's about 1.5 trillion, and that is just based on the numbers in America alone. So that's all in cost ownership of running a Tesla. And when you look at that traditional model, we pay in business from 45p a mile. So it doesn't really cost you that much to own a Tesla, is what he's saying in that disruptive model. But taking that a step further and looking at the customer journey that Tesla are trying to provide for its customers, they're looking to innovate and bring out a ride-sharing app. This is one of the big lofty goals, as we call it, where they're really looking to push and innovate. And when you look forward in that, what is looked at in that business model is that the all-in cost ownership of the Tesla is 47 pence. Start looking at the average cost for ride-sharing, £1.50 to £2.80, and he's saying the average cost to run a robotic taxi is 13p. So a big drive for Tesla, on one of the value propositions that they are stating, is that the cars will eventually be able to be autonomous. And while we're all asleep at night, your taxi can be out ferrying people around autonomously. And he believes it's one of the first vehicles that is not a depreciating asset. It's an asset that will put money in your pocket. So when you start looking at that as a disruptive business model, it's starting to look at how can we pivot and how can we defend against a disruption like that coming to the market. And another real world example that I love is looking at Netflix. So when we go look at Netflix versus Blockbuster, Blockbuster was founded in 1985. Netflix was founded in 1997. And when you look at them two business models, Netflix was started with a subscription DVD through mail order, and Blockbuster was all about getting in your car on a Friday night, jumping down to the local Blockbuster and going and picking your local DVD. And I'm sure many of us will remember, that walk around on a Friday night trying to get the latest movie to find out that it had gone. So then you'd also be pushing and ringing up on a Saturday morning to try and ask if they could reserve it for you so you could get there on a Saturday night to get it back. And the business model was quite different. So the Blockbuster business model was one where you would walk into the store, it'd have a bit of theatre, it'd have upsells of different beverages, crisps and pick and mix, and that was where their business model was, getting you out into the stores so you could pick a movie, and then they could upsell and cross-sell you different items and products. But also, we'll also remember the dreaded late fees. No one liked the late fees. So when we started to look at the customer journey in Netflix, they seek to solve that problem very early on, where they'd already predicted, when you look right back to 1997, they'd already predicted that no longer did we want to jump in our cars and go to Blockbusters. We wanted everything on demand, we wanted videos to come in the post, we wanted no late fees, and they pivoted and changed that business model. But when you look forward to 2000, Blockbuster refused to buy Netflix for $5 million or £3.8 million. So I'm sure there's many sleepless nights from that decision when they didn't choose to buy it. But we roll that forward and we look at Netflix. It starts to it sells its shares. It grosses out at 82 million. And then Blockbuster reached its peak at 5 billion in 2004. So it's an absolute behemoth. It's a monster of a business. It's the leading market, within there. But then we look in 2007, Netflix starts to launch a streaming service on demand video, and we start rolling that forward. And we look at Netflix then goes on to international expansion, and at that same period, Blockbuster starts filing for bankruptcy. But we don't see the innovation stop there from Netflix. We see it continuing to use automation and AI. We see it pivot its business model. So we see that, in 2013, it actually starts producing Netflix originals. So it becomes a content producer, not a content, sharing the content. And it also launches a profiles feature. And when you look at that from a customer journey and people looking at using Netflix, we all, many of us on this call will be using Netflix. What they did very cleverly was use AI and artificial intelligence to start understanding what we watched and to start recommending more of that content to match. So not only did they originally pivot and make it easier to get hold of content, so we didn't have to get in our cars and drive anywhere, they started to use technology to start profiling what we watched, what we recommended, and to start sucking us in more to add more unique value. Roll that forward now, Netflix has got reporting 250 million households worldwide, and it's a 20 billion pound turnover business. So that just shows you the impact of a brand new startup coming in and disrupting a very mature market. So we'll hear this phrase coined quite often: disrupt or be disrupted. And when innovation starts to threaten or disrupt a business model, that's great and it's good conventional wisdom. But what if an innovation poses a threat, like we've just explained there? And how do we tell whether it's generally transformative and what is the potential? And as business owners, or when we're looking at these business models, we need to be understanding what the costs and the benefits of one self-disruption are at a certain stage. So as we start rolling that forward and looking, we need to start looking at how much does it cost to adapt to a disruption. And there are four possible possibilities depending on two factors. So one of them is how many of your company's existing assets are specific to a traditional business. And then secondly, how competitive is your market that you're in. And when you look at this sort of model on here, it's starting to already show that we've got high costs, intermediate costs, low costs, and it all depends on how competitive your market is, and it also depends on what your business model is. So looking at in a bit more detail at them areas. So if we go into area one, and we look at high costs. So in quadrant 1, it's not surprising that this is a danger zone. So companies here operate in a highly competitive environment and have high stocks of assets they've accumulated to support traditional businesses. So when we look at that, the Tesla model versus, General Motors or, any of the big, car garages, their model is completely different in terms of their route to market. They don't have all the car dealerships like they have, the franchises. They're very dependent on tech. If you've been through a Tesla customer journey, everything is bought through the website and then through an app. And the ones that are potentially most at threat to innovation is this area. And ironically, the figure makes it clear that they're also the ones who pay the highest adjustment cost for disrupting themselves in response to that innovation. So when you look at, as we're starting to see now, more car manufacturers are starting to pivot and start to bring electric vehicles to the market. What we're starting to see is a very interesting sort of fight going on in terms of Tesla being a software company first, really, and really pushing on that customer journey. And then we're starting to see the larger companies trying to pivot and change their models when they are carrying a lot of assets. So what sort of companies fall into this quadrant? Traditional automotive manufacturers certainly do. Competition in the industry is fierce. Many of these manufacturers have key assets such as factories, technology, expertise, distribution networks, like I've just mentioned, and they're only useful in a traditional business model, which is predicted on a widespread vehicle ownership. So these companies now have to contend with a rising threat to the traditional model from autonomous vehicles, like we just mentioned, and ride sharing. But interestingly, that then looks at the business model where, are we going to be owning cars in the future, as we have done traditionally? And it posed a question. I was having this question with my daughter. I'm not sure if my daughter will ever drive. She's 7 years old. Will it be a thing of driving in the future? So these are things that businesses need to be looking at in terms of that customer journey. Is it going to be autonomous vehicles, and what is that model going to look like in the future? So pushing that to the next quadrant. So companies in this quadrant tend to bear relatively high indirect costs because there's a greater threat of cannibalization and greater conflict for resources in a highly competitive environment. So traditional game developers are facing, mergers of mobile and gaming, and many on the call, might have seen, Epic Games and all these other games that are trying to pivot and get out of the ecosystem that is Apple. So even that's changing again. So they've gone off traditional consoles. They're starting to go into mobile gaming. When you look at that model from Apple, for example, they take a 30% commission on any sales that go from their App Store. But we're now starting to see some of these bigger game manufacturers starting to pivot and starting to push to get out of these ecosystems to even continue to add more value to the customers. So a good example, Electronic Arts and Nintendo, for example, their stock of assets and IP is compatible with mobile gaming, but they operate in a highly competitive market where product life is short and consumer preferences change quickly. But I think a really good success story at the moment is if you look at Nintendo and EA, they're available on cross platforms now. No longer is it just one platform. So that as they pivot and as they change their business model into new areas. When we look at quadrant 3, so a good example of this over in the UK is Sky really. They tend to have really high costs because they need to develop new assets and lack sometimes expertise in implementing the new business models. So companies, for example, like your satellite and TV industries fall into this quadrant. The industry has been dominated over in the UK by Sky, and we started to see some new entrants in BT and Virgin Media. But the big challenge, there's not massive competition for these businesses for selling packaged TV channels at a relatively high price. And their key stocks are the different networks, the satellites, and the equipment that they install into your premises. Which this is now a massive problem as we've now got companies coming along such as Netflix and Amazon. They're threatening to massively disrupt this model by offering a real low cost video on demand service via the internet. Then we look at quadrant 4. So quadrant 4, companies in this are likely to have the lowest cost of self-disruption because they operate in markets that are not especially competitive, and because their key assets can easily be deployed into new places and for new purposes. So you've got to think here of enterprise software developers such as Microsoft, SAP and Oracle are undergoing disruptive change in what cloud software brings. These companies have high market share and specific application domains, which mean competition isn't always a major concern, and many of their key assets, i.e. in the software development enterprise, can easily be adapted to fit new models. But we are starting to see disruption within these areas, so we're starting to see new platforms coming along, like Google's Workspace now. Amazon are bringing out products, these Facebook for work, WhatsApp. There's all different areas at the moment where new entrants to the market are coming along. We're also starting to see, as many companies will know, of products like Xero, where we can be building our own, version of SAP at a much cheaper cost, where we've got loads of independent products that we can interlink together and disrupt. But a good example of businesses here are ones like Adobe. So Adobe for many years had, Photoshop, Publisher, Illustrator, and there was very much a license-based product on premise. You bought a license and every year you upgrade it. And when you go back and you study the history of Adobe, they've very successfully pivoted to a monthly subscription model. But again, this is looking, there's new entrants to the market where we're looking at new software such as Canva, which many of you might have heard, where they're looking to make it even easier along the customer's journey to develop and create different content from different media platforms. So as we start looking at that and we start looking at the costs and benefits, the framework that I've just highlighted there highlights, it's very useful for leaders considering what the costs and benefits of self-disruption are, as well as it's very useful for new startups looking to enter markets. And as we've just mentioned there, companies in quadrant 4 are well positioned to embrace disruption. Case in point is Microsoft, which is drawing on all of its expertise. And then, like I've just mentioned, Adobe and Photoshop looking to pivot in it. That's area. But we are starting to see native cloud challenges. So, like I just mentioned, Google Workspace, Canva, and these are products that are built on completely different technology that enable a new way of working, which the cloud is providing. So that's got to be understood within the business model. What is the technology that your business model is built on, and is it going to get you where you need to be? Is it different, and is it scalable? But then when we contrast that back to companies in quadrant 1, on the other hand, these are well positioned. They're the most threat to disruption, and they've got a highly competitive market, and without the benefit of leveraging their existing assets and stocks. So if the companies in this quadrant rush to self-disrupt, it's very likely they're going to incur, significant cost adjustments, which may doom their prospects. So it's really challenging for companies within them areas to look and pivot. That's why we start seeing companies, more recently, we've seen General Motors doing a venture with Lyft, for example. So they're trying to pursue an alliance and help manage the shift towards ride sharing. And more recently, Ford had a 500 million investment in an electric startup called Rivian. So we're starting to see the bigger companies starting to shift and look to merger or acquisition or partner up with software providers to help them build the autonomous vehicles. Again, looking at companies in quadrant 2, these can benefit from dividing their assets between existing and disruption models. And in doing so, they have to mitigate the indirect adjustment that companies, such as sharing assets and conflicts that will arise from cannibalization within the industry. So it's very much a viable option of looking where they can leverage, their existing assets. So a good example, like I mentioned earlier, is the way EA Sports are available on multiple platforms. Nintendo, for example, available on multiple platforms. No longer is it just one platform. They're looking to spread and make sure they can pivot across all of them. And this is why, like I mentioned, Nintendo adopted this approach when really focusing on the mobile gaming, and they've still carved out a niche of Nintendo by still manufacturing unique game consoles. Whereas on the other hand, if you look at Sega, they no longer produce consoles, but they're dividing their assets across multiple platforms. They've pivoted and gone into the movie industry with the likes of Sonic. So you're starting to see these different companies still use their IP and still use their assets in different ways. So when we look at this in detail and we start explaining innovation versus disruption, as I've just tried to sort of explain and sort of do a very high level overview, innovation is doing the same things a bit better. Disruption, as I see it, is making things that make the old things obsolete. And in leading with the original point, disruptive innovation can hurt you if you are not the one doing the disruption. So that takes us nicely on to a sort of segue where we pass on to Colin. But we believe these 3 steps to succeed. So you need to understand your business model. So discover, what it is you're actually trying to achieve. And then we can start getting into areas where we can start designing and looking how digital technology can help support the achievement of your business goals, and understand what blockers are in the market, look at what areas you've got to pivot and scale your business model. And that's where I want to sort of start segueing and handing over to Colin on this. Do you want to pick up from here, Colin?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Leon. But what I'll do, I'll just request control of the slides, and hopefully that should work seamlessly as these things do.
1 second.
So I think you've got to approve me there, have you?
Yeah, I have. 1 second. Just trying to find my mouse.
Very good.
So you should have control of the slides now.
It says I am controlling Leon McQuaid. It says on my screen.
That should be fun.
There we go. So hopefully that should work. There we go. So as Leon said, I'm just hopefully going to just kind of segue from his slides, just to really introduce some tools and maybe some thoughts that we can use to discover, design, and decide on how we progress our business models moving forward. Really going to focus on, hopefully some things that are accessible for smaller businesses, and smaller businesses can use to apply some of the principles that Leon's covered. And so we'll look at a specific tool that you can use within your businesses, but then just look at a couple of examples of how other businesses have used those tools to move forward. But one thing I just want to highlight and really focus on is the role of digital technology as well in actually enabling businesses to scale up and pivot and disrupt markets. So the first challenge really is to, I suppose a question to the delegates is, can you name a business who's significantly scaled within the past 10 years without a digitally driven business model? So in the last 10 years, do you know a business that significantly scaled in the last 10 years without a digitally driven business model? So I'm open to anyone. Are there any ideas? Does anyone come to mind? You can unmute or put it in the chat. So I'm trying to get my chat function up there and skipping ahead by accident. So apologies for that. No, so exactly, and I think that's the issue. That's the issue I just want to highlight. Really, I'm yet to find anyone who can give us an answer to that. Anyone who can actually identify a company who over the past 10 years has significantly scaled without adopting digital technology. So just looking at, I suppose, businesses where we associate as being what would probably term unicorns, those companies who have scaled up incredibly quickly across the 10 years on the back of really harnessing digital technology. And here I'll just quickly run through these, and you can see a whole raft of businesses. So some well-known names, some businesses that are kind of scaling up out of China, etc. But they've literally in the past, you're seeing here 4 years for Didi, who have gone, beyond $3 billion worth of turnover in a relatively short space of time. So we're seeing companies on the back of adopting digitally driven business models achieving incredible levels of scale within such a short space of time. And I think that this is really where the relevance comes into smaller businesses, because even 3-4 years ago, these were SMEs, these were startups, these were small companies, but the ability is there now, really on the back of harnessing some of the technologies that are available to achieve scale really quickly and implement that disruptive innovation that Leon was talking about. And 10 years ago, none of those businesses who are now, multi-billion pound concerns didn't exist 10 years ago. So I think that's the opportunity that's on hand. And what we want to see on that list UK companies. One of the unfortunate thing is that there's too few UK based organisations who are achieving that level of scale. So that's really what we want to explore today, and see more of those businesses really coming out of the UK and the Humber. Wouldn't it be great if in 3, 4, 5 years time, we're citing examples that are actually coming out the Humber in that area, and it's possible. Just elaborating further, but some of the challenges, however, that face particularly existing companies are really highlighted from this chart that's on the screen now. Where the vast majority of companies exist is in that red box. They exist in a situation where supply's high, so there's lots of competition, there's lots of people doing similar things to what they do as an organisation, but demand's low. So we're basically in a situation where supply outstrips demand. So what that means is that everyone's competing really quite vigorously over the same customers. They're trying to deliver a value proposition that puts them head and shoulders above the competition, and getting customers to spend with them rather than others. And that's not a great place to be, because it's almost a race to the bottom. Margins are tight, cash flow's tight, people are working incredibly hard, and they're just not seeing the rewards for that effort. And that's not a place there where we want to be. And of course, the situation that puts us in is that, and I've been there myself, where we're constantly having to increase value, to entice those customers to spend with us rather than other people. We see this kind of scenario played out daily on platforms like Amazon and all those sort of things. So constantly trying to add value, get the product to the customer quicker, maybe giving free add-ons, all those sort of things. But equally in parallel with the price is more sensitive. We're having to drive down the price, so we don't want to be there. That's not a good place to be. And as I say, if anything else, where we're working incredibly hard, but they're just not seeing the rewards for that effort. And so we want to support people to really see the rewards for the effort that they're putting in. And where people see the highest rewards is within the blue box on the diagram in front of you now. So where a lot of the examples all of the examples that Leon's really drawn on, they tend to be in that blue box. They tend to be in a situation where demand's high for what they do, but supply's low. And supply tends to be low because they're doing things differently. They're delivering a product or service in a different way that really carves them out that niche. That what academics would call that blue ocean, where there's no competition, where the fish are plenty, and where there's lots of value to be reaped. One thing I would highlight, however, is though that over time that blue ocean turns red. It gradually becomes that price sensitive space that we talked about previously. So regardless of which organisation it is, Netflix will be disrupted at a point in time if they don't continue to reinvent their business model, to continue to focus on disruption and that kind of next wave of innovation. So this is a constant effort, and we'll maybe find an answer today, but that doesn't mean that it's the answer to tomorrow. So we're always having to innovation and disruption is a constant effort. And the best time to innovate is when times are good. You know, when you're building up working capital reserves, where you're bringing new customers on, because it's incredibly hard to change when you're starting to lose customers and when cash is tight. So the time to innovate is when you know, you're kind of on that growth curve. Just to kind of bring to life and just highlight a couple of things about the model that Leon was describing. I think if we think of it almost in financial terms, or in, I suppose, in terms of how a traditional business would grow, it kind of looks a bit like this. So most businesses, you know, sales will increase over time, but for the vast majority of businesses, what happens is that their cost base tends to increase in parallel. What Leon was talking about was companies who are breaking this mold. They're breaking this cycle where they're actually seeing that relationship between an increase in costs as sales increases. And one of the reasons that they are trying to break that mold is that having a model like that is incredibly difficult to scale. And the problem is, you know, and I think this is really brought to life in the situation we're in at the moment around COVID and with EU exit over the horizon, is that if we actually see a reduction in sales, and we've got this type of asset hungry and cost hungry model, actually, if we do see that drop in sales, costs can very quickly outstrip revenues, and then we're in a very difficult situation, which ultimately leads to the liquidation and the administration of businesses. So this is as much about you know, growth, scaling up, developing disruptive models, as it is about actually building a more resilient model, a model that can withstand some of the situations that we're seeing at the moment with pandemics, EU exit, environmental concerns that are coming over the horizon. You know, actually building a more resilient business model is a really sensible thing for us to be focusing on at the moment. So again, just putting it in kind of in a graph, I think that what the examples that Leon gave around Netflix and Tesla for example, is that they tend to operate a model that looks a bit more like this. As sales increase, and they're developing models that are really good at generating sales, you know, that's part of the disruption. But as sales increase, this is the impact to the cost. As sales increase, there's a marginal impact on the cost base. And basically what we're seeing there is, you know, a more profitable business over time. It's what accountants would call high operating leverage. So it's not a new concept, but it's, you know, it's certainly something that is more accessible to companies now because of digital technology. Digital technology makes this model more or less available to any business in any sector selling anything to different people. So it's a great time to start to think about this. Again, in terms of developing models that have this kind of pattern, it's nothing new. The classic example is thinking about franchise. So the franchisor tends to have this type of relationship within their business. As revenue increases, there's a marginal impact on their costs. The reason for that is that I'll just go back to the previous slide, is that they've passed this type of model back onto the franchisee. So it's them who are actually taking on all the cost, having the working capital issue, all the kind of stuff that we want to get out of. You know, the franchisor always kind of pass that back to the franchisee. So they're actually in a positive working capital position. They're, you know, and that's because they tend to get an upfront payment for the purchase of a franchise. They're getting incremental payments based on company performance or the performance of their franchisees, etc. moving forward. So it's this type of model that we want to get. But sometimes just thinking, if I was going to franchise my business, you know, how would I do it, can sometimes be a useful exercise to go through. Not necessarily suggesting that everyone goes away and franchises their business, however. So how do we think about that within our own businesses? Well, a really useful tool to do that is something called the business model canvas. This is around actually how do we innovate our business model to create that disruptive space, and to be in a position where hopefully we can carve out that blue ocean. This version of the canvas that you see in front of you is a Winning Moves adapted version. But just to go through what that means is that just focusing firstly on leadership. So innovation needs context. It needs a reason to innovate. So quite often what provides that reason or that catalyst or focus for innovation is vision. You know, what's your vision in 5 years' time? Where do you want to be? You know, what does the world look like? You know, what sort of turnover have you got? What sort of footprint have you got from a market point of view, or you know, are you trading in the Humber, or are you a global outfit? Are you one of those kind of unicorns of the future who are achieving high levels of growth? So it's vision that I suppose creates the context for innovation and makes us think differently. You know, to achieve that vision, to achieve the stretching goals that we've set out for ourselves, we're going to have to do things differently. So it's about, you know, hopefully trying to put those drivers in place through a business that are going to make us think differently about our business and do different things. Because of course, if we continue to do the things that we did last year and the year before, we're just going to get the same results. We'll maybe get 10% more sales, or you know, but fundamentally we're still going to be in the same situation. So fundamentally, that's about having leadership that's going to break the mold. Critical's value proposition. So why is someone going to buy from you rather than your competitors? Are you giving them a good enough reason to do that? Again, there's lots of options in particularly that technology can introduce that we'll go through in a bit more detail, that we can really harness to deliver more value to our customers. So I'm struggling, my screen's a bit grainy, so I'm struggling to read my own model here, so apologies for that. We've then got the customers. So who are you going to target? Are you going to look for new customers? Are you going to look for customers in different areas? You know, what's motivating those customers? What markets are they in? Are they in growth markets, etc., which leads us neatly onto the market section. So again, is your market growing? Is it shrinking? Is there a need to carve out space in new markets, and how can technology help you to do that? Another thing, just thinking about resilience within business models. Are you exposed to one particular supply chain or one customer or one market? Sometimes actually, you know, creating a bit of diversity across the markets and the customers that you're selling to can help spread risk. And again, you know, that helps build more resilience in business models. So, you know, even if you're seeing growth within your existing markets, sometimes thinking actually, how can we separate our eggs across multiple baskets? So if we drop on those baskets, it's not going to have such an impact on our business. Is a good way to think. And then again, just thinking about the products, how are you going to harness intellectual property? A lot of the examples that Leon talks about, but essentially those businesses, they're developing IP and they're developing models where they're exploiting the value of that IP. So it might be through licensing the technology, moving from the sale of automobiles to actually, you know, the provision of automated rides, or you know, like Tesla, etc. So, and how you're locking people in. Again, a lot of product-based companies and software-based companies are moving to as a service models. So rather than looking for an upfront fee for a product or a service, they're actually getting getting customers into a position where they're getting used to paying X amount every month, you know, or based on usage, etc. And again, we'll look at that in a bit more depth. So that's all the external stuff. You've then got the internal stuff. So to drive that model, who are the critical people in your business? You know, what are the critical skills? Who are the kind of key partners that are going to help you get product to market? In terms of finances, you know, what are your revenue streams? Again, a lot of businesses now are looking to develop models that are harnessing multiple revenue streams. So it may be that upfront payment for a product or a service, but then actually you're getting that reoccurring revenue on the back of that. Again, normally leveraged through technology. Finance, again, there's a real opportunity to increase productivity. So how are you going to get more out of your resources? How are you going to increase productivity within the business and ultimately become more profitable? And then there's a whole kind of process side of things. So what are the key technologies, processes, systems, etc. that you need? So so this is a tool that you can really use within your businesses just to play about with your business model. Now, it's a great tool to kind of blow up into a big sheet that you can put on the wall. You know, when we can get back together in our businesses to have a group of people with sticky notes, kind of generating different ideas. But the starting position is almost to choose one of the boxes. So you could start with the value proposition. So in terms of what we're delivering to customers, are the changes we could make to that? And based on those changes, does that mean that we can suddenly think about new markets, new customers, new types of product, etc.? What does it mean to the leadership? So actually focusing on value proposition has a knock-on effect to all the other boxes within the model. Equally, you could start by thinking about customers. So if we target a different customer group, what would that mean in terms of the value proposition that we would need to develop and deliver? Would that open up new markets? So the new kind of product configurations that we can put together for that customer? What does that mean in the technologies and the skills that we need in the business, etc. And equally markets, you know, are there different markets, different supply chains, different geographies that we can target, and again, it will have a knock-on effect. So it's a great tool to use within your businesses, just to play about with different scenarios. And this is all around ideation, you know, developing new ideas that you can further develop and really figure out how you can harness this tool to move forward. So that's an overview of the kind of canvas that I suppose I advocate that you could use within your business. So what we're going to do now is just look at a couple of businesses who have disrupted, who have pivoted, and you know, and these are all relatively small companies who have harnessed technology to do something very different around their business model. So the first example here is actually, this is a wealth management company who have harnessed artificial intelligence technology to take a very different approach to what they do. So I'm just going to play you a video, and then we'll take a bit of a deeper look.
Betterment, the smart modern way to invest, as explained by actual employees.
Hello.
With no financial jargon.
The old way of investing is like a paper map. You have to figure out how to get from A to B yourself, and you have no idea whether or not there's traffic on the way. Betterment's like a GPS.
Right.
We help you get to where you need to go, and we use technology so that you can just enjoy the ride.
Nice. How does it work?
You come to Betterment, you tell us what you're saving for. Retirement, vacation, home down payment.
Boats are cool.
Boats are cool. We take all this information and make recommendations about how much you should invest with us initially, how much you should save over time, the type of risk you should be taking. From there, the technology makes you personalized portfolios of stock and bond ETFs based on our...
little help here?
Okay, it's like having a team of chefs who make delicious, well-balanced meals based on your preferences. Like, you only eat organic.
But why should I choose Betterment?
We're a fiduciary.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, fiduciary is a strange word, but it's a simple concept. It means that we are bound to do what's right for our clients.
Fantastic. Okay, Nick, can you tell us more?
The technology at Betterment is designed to take all of the complicated processes that go into building the portfolio and streamline them so that you don't really have to worry about it.
Can you use an analogy?
Kind of like a pizza, right?
Not at all like a pizza.
No. How much does it cost?
The annual fee of Betterment is 25 basis points. On an account with $100,000, that's like $20 per month, which is a fraction of the cost of what you would pay for traditional financial services. Plus, there's no hidden fees.
Swish. So you're saying Betterment is the smart, modern way to invest?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a lot easier.
Well done.
So there you go. That's Betterman, as in the business. Oh, sorry, I can't quite see the writing there. But just to look at their model. So essentially, what Betterman do, they deliver value to their customers, or their value proposition has been enhanced by adopting artificial intelligence technology. And if you think about the way wealth management traditionally works, is you'll engage a wealth manager, they'll develop a portfolio, they'll talk about, what your kind of investment goals are, etc. And then they'll physically put that together and they'll make those investments and manage them on your behalf. What Betterman do is, through the use of artificial intelligence, they've essentially automated that process. So essentially, through a platform, you say, this is the amount I want to invest. These are my investment goals, and they'll automate that process. It will essentially develop that portfolio and make those investments on your behalf. The other thing about the Betterment platform is that it's really easy to adjust. So basically, what you can do at any point, and you can do it from an app on your smartphone, is you can change those parameters. So for some reason, maybe you think, actually, I was planning to invest over a 10-year period, but for some reason I've maybe started a business, so I need to release some capital a lot sooner than that. You could change the lifetime of that investment to 2 years, 5 years, or change the amount you're investing, etc. And again, based on your requirements, it'll adjust your portfolio. So if you're looking for a much bigger short-term gain, I suppose, or return, then it'll go into a riskier portfolio, etc. And obviously, it makes you aware of some of the risks involved in that. So that's fundamentally what Betterman are doing. Obviously, that's got, to that business. So it essentially, as a customer, it reduces my cost. So I'm not paying the same level of management fees. Actually, that's vastly reduced because of the cost base of the Betterment platform's a lot lower than the physical approach adopted in traditional wealth management. But then actually, if I do want that more personal touch, I can actually access that through Betterment as well. I can get premium options to actually access advisors, but it's still a lot cheaper than the traditional approach. And again, there's some benefits to that because it's just a lot more flexible. In terms of the disruption that creates, is that it obviously disrupts the traditional wealth management market and also financial advisory marketplace. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead too quickly here. One of the other things that's interesting about Betterment is that within their model, they're now licensing their software almost in a vanilla form to other wealth management, so traditional wealth management and financial advisors. So as well as I suppose getting the revenue from their core business, they're now also getting license revenue from other financial advisors and wealth management practitioners, because they're now licensing the Betterment software. So as you can see, really disruptive from that point of view, and puts Betterment in an incredible position. And of course, the more data they get, the more effective their model becomes, because the system's learning more from the data. I won't go back through the slides, but the next example is actually a northern-based SME called the MBT Group, and they have a solution, a supply chain solution, or developed a supply chain solution called Evolutive. And the MBT Group, family-run business, over 100 years old, very similar to a lot of businesses we deal with. And essentially what they do, and what they've historically did, is they sell consumables, manufacturing consumables, and traditionally it's been manufacturers' tape that's used within the manufacturing processes is traditionally what they've been a wholesaler and distributor of. What they've now done is that they've really expanded that product range, so they sell a lot more product now, but they do it through almost like a vendor system that they now place in manufacturing plants. So essentially, you could almost think of it as a vending machine that sits in it could be a business in automotive supply chain, etc. Sits within the manufacturing plant, and basically, as and when needed, operators can go and get parts or consumables out of the vending machine on an as and when required basis. The way they do that, they've basically got a fob that interacts with the vending machine and opens a drawer for the particular product that they want. So it's almost like a Kanban type of system. Obviously, when a product is removed, the system knows who's removed it based on their fob detail, and they also know that the stock is reduced within that system. So it's a connected device that's always monitored. So MBT Group, when stock's running low, they can automatically go and replenish that stock. This is a business actually in I think it was the Ward Hadaway, who are a northern legal firm. I think this firm were actually crowned the most scalable business in the north a couple of years ago, based on the implementation of this system. Essentially, they're doing exactly the same thing as they used to do. They're just delivering that product and service to the customer in a different way. Of course, one of the things that the customers like is that it's almost introducing just-in-time management to the way they deal with consumables. So essentially what it means is that it increases their or improves their working capital position. So in terms of the purchaser's working capital position, because the stock is owned by the MBT Group until it's actually removed from the vendor machine. Sorry, it's technically not a vendor machine. I think they would kill me for describing it as that. It's a lot more sophisticated, but it's probably the easiest way to describe it. The way they generate revenue as well, the purchaser has the ability to order different types of stock. So the system is integrated with the MBT Group's online store. So all the products, it's either automatically replenished, or the purchasers within the manufacturing business can have the ability to order new lines, etc., or new types of product that they may need moving forward. So it provides a lot more flexibility. And the other thing the MBT Group have found is that actually and this has been an education piece in terms of the manufacturing buyers, but they're actually prepared to pay a bit more because of the added benefits and the cost benefits that they're getting in terms of working capital, but also the reduction in stock holding, the reduction in waste, and all those sort of things. They're actually paying the MBT Group a bit more now for the use of this particular system. So again, quite disruptive, and obviously that's having a huge impact on traditional consumable wholesale and distribution firms. This is something that's being adopted, really widely. So I think that's a really good example. And I think a business, they've gone from, on the back of implementing that, from round about 2 to just short of 10 million on the back of that system over the past 2 or 3 years. So, really significant growth. And another example here, and this is the last example I'll walk you through, but hopefully it just gives you a flavour of how you can use the canvas to play about with your business model and think about new ways of doing things and rethinking your business. All these businesses, so the MBT group, they used to define themselves as being a wholesaler of consumables to manufacturers. They now think of them as a technology company. And just another thing to highlight, because of that mentality, they're automating everything at the moment. All their account systems, they're all automated now. So they are, harnessing technology right across the business, because they're thinking about themselves in a slightly different way to the way they used to think about themselves. In terms of this is another business who now think of themselves as a technology company, but actually a lot more than a technology company. And Metro Mile are essentially an insurance business, an insurance business who have developed something called the Metro Mile tag. And you see this from a lot of insurance businesses now. There's essentially devices that they'll fix to a car so it can kind of monitor the speed you're driving, and they adjust premiums based on that. Essentially what Metro Mile do, they put the Metro Mile tag on the car, and essentially it monitors the amount of miles that you're driving, and your premium is basically based on the amount of miles you drive. So you're paying an insurance premium based on usage rather than just kind of a flat fee model that we're all used to. I must say it's something that I would probably have benefited from in lockdown, because I haven't done that many miles since March. So my insurance premium would have been significantly lower than before. So that's in terms of the pricing model and in the way they're addressing the insurance market. It's disruptive, and it's doing something very, very different. However, their mentality of thinking more in terms of being a technology company and harnessing the technology that they've been developing has started to take the business into a whole raft of different ways. So now mile tag, miles that you've done.
Colin,
also,
you back there, Colin?
Hello?
Yeah, you're back.
Oh, sorry, did I go for
Only
a
for a
minute
second.
there?
Just for a second. You're back now, though.
Right. Yeah, so just rerun that. So, but Metro Mile now, as well as measuring the amount of miles, they also now measure how a car is performing. So, is it working efficiently? They're essentially using predictive maintenance technology to monitor the efficiency of the engine and all those sort of things, so they can predict if it's going to break down. They know if the tolerance is kind of going out of kilter, and basically, based on that, they will then provide, again, all through an app on the smartphone, to tell the driver that maybe you should be thinking about taking the car into a garage, or having it serviced, or maybe you need a new part, and all those sort of things. So it's almost trying to predict a breakdown before it happens, and inform the driver of the risk. What they now do is they now actually provide. So I'm just clicking forward there. They're now actually have become more of a mechanic business. So, as well as offering insurance, they now offer a mechanic service. So, if your car is going to break down, they'll then connect you with one of their mechanics, which again, they're not holding the cost for those mechanics. They're contracting with existing garages who will provide that service on their behalf. So again, going back to Leon's slide, what they're trying to do is deliver those models where they're not taking on the cost. The cost is within the garage. So again, they're developing a whole range of different opportunities and different revenue streams and services based on the technology that they've put in place. Of course, that's disrupting traditional car and insurance drivers. Sorry, I'm good at jumping too far ahead. Traditional insurance companies, but also services like the AA and traditional car garages. They're disrupting that whole marketplace. I'm sure that's something that we'll see more becoming kind of mainstream, more of a mainstream approach within the insurance marketplace. So that's it from me. Hopefully there's a useful tool there and a couple of useful examples that just illustrate how other businesses have used the canvas to think about new ways of doing things. So I'll hand back over to Leon.
Thank you. So I should be able to continue sharing these slides.
I've given up control. I've given you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yep. So just sort of wrap up the webinar. We've obviously Colin's given you some fantastic sort of tools, and I've tried to give you some real world examples as well of different models that you can do to innovate within your business. But I want to sort of start closing out the webinar in these digital technology support available for businesses that can really make a difference under the Humber Growth Hub. And on there, these weekly webinars, and I've just put some notes on there of the latest ones. We've got one on Friday the 13th, cloud-based computing. Monday the 16th of November, how SMEs can use big data for smarter business decisions. And on the 20th of November, discover emerging and disruptive technologies. Outside of that, we also need to share do we need to share a poll, Colin? I think we do, don't we? I think
I'll look to Sadia for that one.
Sadia, is Sadia is on. Do we need to share a poll, Sadia?
I will have a look, Leon, if we've got any questions set up. I can't see that we have. So
okay.
We can circulate those after the webinar.
Brilliant. Okay. And then this just explains some digital resources on the Grow My SME digital resources page. That's where you can go sign up and see multiple different webinars that have been run if you can't make them in person. So many people might be watching this, might be watching it for a rerun. On top of that, you can register your business interest at Grow My SME /inquire now. And this is so you can become eligible for a full suite of business support. So access to business grants and investment advisory, one-to-one business growth advisory sessions, one-to-one expert mentoring sessions, and we can help with your supply chain and network, digital catalyst, which are all schemes to help your business scale up in there. So digital catalyst, just explain more about that. The digital catalyst is a one-to-one expert support for your business. Support available is a digital benchmark tool, which is fantastic. That sort of lets you discover where you currently are now. And then you get expert support of how digital adoption can help within your business. So running digital design sprints to really help, as Colin's mentioned on the business model canvas, look at your value proposition or look across that model to try and see where value is needed. So you can work with experts like myself and Colin and these other people in the network. And then we help you put what's called a digital action plan together. What steps you need to take to really, progress your business forward and look to either disrupt or look to try and defend against disruption coming into your market using some of them frameworks that we've just mentioned. Then we can look at different brokerage. So, you might not need support from, you might need an app developer, you might need some cybersecurity, you might need market advice. Just to look to where you pivot, or as Colin mentioned, you might be looking at franchising your business model, or as what we're seeing a lot from some of these support projects that we do. A good example with that finance company coming up with a great, fantastic app that they might look to leverage and commercialise separately to that business model. So, a full new business model coming out of a sprint. Then we can help you procure selection, of different technologies out there available to help you progress with your business model. So in a nutshell, the Digital Catalyst offers bespoke one-to-one support for businesses from expert technology specialists. The approach is stimulating, it's thought-provoking, challenging, and the whole idea is just to challenge your thinking and just have a different perspective to try and prioritize ideas, from a design sprint. And it also assists, different aspects of how digital technology adoption can help. So working more effectively, efficiently, developing new products and services to enhancing your customer offer and winning more work. Also helps you attract and retain staff, and also keep you cyber safe. And also, we can also signpost you to access to additional support and further funding from grants. So that's it. So I think that's it from the some examples. I missed this slide, sorry. Some examples of projects that we worked with: move your operations to the cloud, consolidate different technology infrastructures, tools and applications to increase productivity, introduction to e-commerce, cybersecurity, online accounting, implementing a CRM or a customer relationship management tool. And the Digital Catalyst can help you overcome various challenges to adopting digital technology, including identifying which technology can add value to your business, judge which options offer value for money, and also help you highlight what's going to have the most impact and also the right fit for your business. Understand the knock-on changes that will be required. So, like Colin mentioned earlier, when you look at the business model framework, you might focus on the value proposition, but it will throw up maybe leadership challenges, staffing, resourcing, of how you're going to pivot, and then also what technologies you're going to need to underpin that. So if you are looking to automate, does your line of business software allow that automation? And also you might need to start then changing your security practices to align with that. And then also identify how different technologies will integrate into existing systems and processes, like I've just mentioned. And then ultimately, how can you implement and manage this technology on an ongoing basis? So outcomes and real lasting impact: increase business agility and flexible and resilience, help you grow, improve profits, higher profits, increase efficiency, reducing costs so you can deliver more for less, as we've just shown, enhance customer experience for existing and also new clients, and attract and retain staff, and cybersecurity. So to find out more, the Digital Catalyst team can be contacted on the following phone number, and you can also look us up on the Grow My SME website as well. So that's it. Thank you for attending, and I'm sure, Colin, you've got any final words as we depart? No, just saying he's on mute.
Unmute. Thanks very much, Leon, and just thanks to all the delegates. That's great. Really enjoyed it, and yeah, but please, again, this funding's out there at the moment. There's no guarantee that it's going to be there in the future. So I think just take advantage of it now is, I think, a real key message from me.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's been brilliant. So thank you, Colin. It's been an absolute pleasure and honour. Learned lots, so thanks for that, and thank you for everyone attending.